everybody. I'm Jim Williams. Welcome to Stream On. This is Nurses Day, and I gotta say that those who are on the front lines fighting the COVID-19 battle are our soldiers, and they've done an exemplary job both here in the United States and worldwide, and they continue to do it on a regular basis. Now, as of today, the COVID-19 deaths among healthcare workers, especially nurses, are overwhelming. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, over 9,000 frontline nurses have contracted the disease as of mid-April. 27 of them have died. That's just here in the United States. If we look worldwide, those numbers of nurses dying total well into the thousands. So today is indeed a very, very important day to take the time to think about those wonderful nurses who are fighting the battle for us and trying to keep us well. You know, this week I spoke to Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Norman Stone from his home in Scotland. He's the man behind the fascinating story of Florence Nightingale that is a centerpiece of Britbox Healthcare Heroes Celebration, now playing on the highly popular streaming service owned by the BBC and ITV. Norman, we welcome you. And you had a fascinating subject in Florence Nightingale. Let's talk about what you found out in your process of putting together what is an outstanding film.
Well, I certainly have. I lived in her world for a while, put it that way. But she's got an age preference on me. She's 250 years old later this month, isn't she? So, but she actually invented the nurses. I couldn't believe her character once you get to know her, and she wrote ever so many letters, I can tell you. What a character. My goodness, she'd have thrived in this current coronavirus state. It sounds strange to say, but she would. She would roll up her sleeves and organize everybody. I can guarantee you that.
Well, I think really at the heart of Nightingale and that whole situation is that what we've seen here is something that I've known, fortunately, because I have a lot of family members who are, in the medical profession, both doctors and nurses, and they, right now my nephew is a doctor in New York who actually got coronavirus. Fortunately, was able to get over it. I have two nieces in the Philadelphia area that are, nurses who are on the front lines, and the nursing industry, profession is a frontline jump in and just do what it takes to get things done kind of profession.
That's true, and we've seen more of that close up because of this latest plague, really. I think we always sort of knew they were that, and we've all watched the TV nurses and doctors series and things, but this was for real. I have a nephew and a niece the same, a nurse and a doctor, and the young guy who's a doctor, he caught it as well and kept on going when he could get back and so on. It's quite dramatic, put it that way.
Well, I think one of the things that, and we'll talk about Florence Nightingale in your film, you just said it, she would jump in with both hands. And that is the way, if that tells you anything about the woman, right? The fact that 250 years later, we are talking about women and men, both doctors and nurses, but just more specific today for nurses, right? That they have followed that lead, that she set a marker and from that marker, people have continued to follow her lead 250 years later.
That's true, and she made sure they did in many ways. She died when she was 90, and she was still writing, I don't know how many letters a day. I mean, it was scores, if not hundreds. I mean, she never really stopped. And when she came, she never recovered quite from the war. She caught various sort of diseases and things there. And in the end, they thought, well, that's her. She'll have to be convalesced at home and have to be bedbound and all this. She then got into gear at that point. She went even faster and further. It was to be pitied if you were an MP, a member of Parliament during her later years. I mean, you'd get letters and demands from Florence Nightingale, who lived just about a mile and a half away, I guess, and she would not let go. Do you know that somebody offered her? She was very brutal in her assessments. Somebody offered her a sort of I suppose you'd call it a packed hospital to take to the field. You join the bits and make it up there when you get on the battlefield area. Right. And it was all made up of triangles, and this designer was very pleased, and he had all this very fancy design, all triangles, and it fitted together well and so on. And she refused it, and she said, that's very interesting design, but when people are triangle-shaped, and beds are triangle-shaped, and wards are triangle-shaped, I'll let you know. And she turned it down. And it was Isambard Kingdon Brunel who designed all the main railways in Britain that came up with the best designs for her hospitals, because she had that terrible time in the military hospital at Scutari, which was in Turkey during the war, of course, there. And that was just basically a filthy old cesspit. And she really got her head together into organizing what things should be, especially on battlefields and troubles like that. She really said, this has got to start from zero. We've got to work this out fresh. And she did. Brilliant.
Well, what brought you to decide that you wanted to do a film on Florence Nightingale?
Well, I did a film for a company in New York, actually, about C.S. Lewis. And that was a man with something extra than just being an interesting chap. And Florence Nightingale, bizarrely, on the short list that you sort of play with, she just stood out head and shoulders above the rest. Frankly, I hadn't known that much about her. I mean, St. Thomas's Hospital, where Boris Johnson nearly died, apparently, he went there during his recent trouble. She invented that hospital, built that hospital, and that was her place. In fact, there's a wonderful museum on the ground floor about Florence Nightingale. And I challenge anybody to walk through that museum and not be utterly swept away by this woman who just wouldn't let go and kept on going. She saved so many lives. And it wasn't easy. This was a woman going into a man's world, as you pointed out a minute ago, in amongst really hardline generals, and the women were meant to go and make sandwiches or have the vapors, and she was having none of it. She really did it. And that museum spoke a lot to me at that point. But of course, you learn a little about just to sort of make the pitch for an idea. But that was just the beginning of it. It was like opening the Christmas present. It wasn't the Christmas present itself. And she was a fantastic character and lent itself to a wonderful edge of drama. I mean, I couldn't afford, forgive me, but I couldn't afford, even on a BBC budget, to do all the battles that she'd been involved in and taking care of the soldiers that came back wounded, not set back in 1856, for goodness sake. Right. So we found creative ways around that, but it's all centered on the strength and character of this woman. I mean, the music, this sounds a strange thing to suddenly throw in, but the music hall as an art form was very big in Victorian England, and it spread around the world, of course. And that was directly connected with Florence Nightingale's era, her years when she came back from the Crimea War. They'd already been singing about her in the music halls, which had not existed before that time. So two things came together: the hugely dramatic Crimean War and Florence Nightingale as the heroine of the empire, and this new form of art form, which was singing, humor, skills, and a real good night out at the music hall. And so I replaced the battles of the Crimea with music hall, which was wonderful. It worked really, really well. So, and it fitted the budget. So it's a testament to me, because I've made a lot of films, a testament to me of the character of the woman, and dear Laura Fraser, who plays her so well, that she takes that film and strides through it and is it. You don't even get swept away by crazy musical numbers. She is it. And I'm proud of the fact that we actually get the real Florence Nightingale in the film. It's a highly entertaining watch.
Now, Norman, you talked about in your research reading letters. Were there volumes and volumes of these letters that you read?
Yes, there were, and there are. Some of them are still private. I mean, the nice thing about making films over here in good old Great Britain is you stumble across people who've got these little boxes. Oh, but this is from Florence Nightingale as well. And better still, you stumble across the actual place. I mean, we filmed it in her home, the real home that she lived in, which was standing empty and about to be renovated and basically maybe stopped to be, you can imagine it being renovated wrongly. I had to climb over 2 lots of fences with a camera to try and get close, to look in through the windows, to believe my eyes that was in fact the same actual building that she lived in. And that was our studio. It was wonderful. Wow. That sort of thing happens in Britain, as do the reams of letters that still will turn up, I'm sure, between now and the next millennia. She wrote a lot.
What was one of the most interesting things? Obviously, you, as a filmmaker, there are things that fascinate you and surprise you. Was there anything that surprised you at all about Florence Nightingale?
Yes. Even though I knew she was a strong character, even though I knew she wasn't going to give up easily, her absolute determination, when any normal human being would have said, you know what, let's turn it in. This has gone far enough. Any normal person would have said that. She absolutely didn't. And you forget, if you're not careful, how far out from the modern culture and the very Victorian upper circles that you would be moving in. She was way out on a limb across the Bosphorus or somewhere, being in the most dreadful situations, which never got reported properly in the press until the second half of the war, when the Times sent somebody out that really told the truth. But she was by herself, well, her and her nurses, really against everybody else in the picture. Was military, imposing military, brutes of people, and generals who did not get disobeyed. And she stuck on in there. And the other thing that surprises me is her humanity. Once or twice I came across people that said, oh, but she was a bossy boots, wasn't she? She was the sort of person that would absolutely just organize, no soul and spirit. Quite the reverse. There was once, I still found it moving, there was once a young soldier dying. And she literally went around with a lamp. She was the lady with the lamp, and she came across this poor lad who was crying for his mother. And she said, she was crying, Mum, Mum. And she said, I will be your mother tonight. And she sat with him right to his death, and he died. Now, any person who's been on a busy ward will know that would be a costly thing to do. And she had that care for the individual that is utterly wonderful and moving. She was capable of that, as well as she always put herself last. I think that's the other thing. She put herself last and served everyone else, which nursing at its best, of course, has always done since, which is jolly good. Good for her. I'm a fan, as you can probably see.
Yeah, I kind of got that. But, you cannot, as a filmmaker, you cannot take the time and the effort. My own personal background is that of a television producer, director, mainly in sports and politics and somewhat news. So I understand that you cannot, you have to have something that gets you passionate enough to drive you to want to do this. It's not something that you look at and go, oh, great. You know what? Florence Nightingale, that's if that's not high box office boffo stuff, let's, come on. I'm gonna be able to build a home in south of France off of this one.
Yeah, there you
go. It's got to be about the passion.
It has, and she had that.
Or without, forget it. You're not going to do it.
That's right, and it's difficult to get close to you because I've done drama documentaries and dramas about real live people as was, and many times. And you get close to people, and sometimes you think, okay, fair enough, good. Others you think, wow. And others just grab you by the heart and won't let go.
Right.
And I think that happened to the crew as well when they were filming this. It was not always under the easiest conditions, trying to film 1856 in busy Liverpool for a start and things like that. But they were utterly committed to this. And it shows. That sort of thing shows. And I'm glad it shows if it shows back on her, because she needs to be applauded for what she did. She would say, stuff and nonsense. Let's just get on with it. But if you can get something of that spirit and the gift that she gave, which was nursing as we know it, and you just say, frontline, that is such a good term. She was inventing this in the Crimea, and that was frontline. And even in peacetime and in other places, that selflessness is always at the best of nursing, at the center of the best of nursing. And the film, I think, that's what I'm proud about. I suppose the film shows that. And I took her seriously. And frankly, I'd do it all again if it hadn't been made now, if I knew what I know about her now. She's not just a distant icon on a statue. You know, she's a beating heart, which is great.
Absolutely. Norman, you know, we look forward to getting to see it this coming week.
Yes,
and,
I think Britbox have done a really good job. They found the 250th birthday. They're in, of course, 6 weeks earlier. I think, 6 days earlier, isn't it? It's National Nurses Week. I mean, come on, that's such a gift. And I believe, you'd know more than me, but I believe there's 10,000 free subscriptions going to healthcare workers in New York City. Good for them. Exactly, I hope they have a chance to catch it. With Britbox, they probably will. So that it's well worth. It's amusing. It's entertaining, and absolutely you'll get the heart of Nightingale, and you'll see it up close.
Well, you know, one of the great things about it, and we will be watching, no question. One of the great things about Britbox and other wonderful streaming services now is that those of us here in the U.S. get to see some of the wonderful works from you guys in the UK, from Canada, from Australia, from New Zealand.
Yeah, and that's how it should be, shouldn't it? We should.
Right.
We should. It's all the same community. So in terms of the world and in drama and in film, and sometimes I think we just follow a straight and simple, safe line. I've always really I enjoy being surprised by other people's work. I really do, and I recommend it.
Well, and as someone who is a filmmaker and a producer like yourself, you've got to look at it and go, wow, you know, we've got these so many different streaming services out there now, Britbox being very good at what they do.
I've just finished a film, and one is just coming out on Friday. What is today? Oh, there we are, the end of this week. And that is a medical issue as well. That's to do with a treatment for heroin addiction, in fact, opioid addiction more broadly.
Wow.
That claims to get you off in 5 to 7 days, without any major discomfort, and then remove all your cravings. Now, are you kidding me? So we did a trial in Kentucky, and we filmed up close and personal, and we did all the questions. And I tell you, it's called The Final Fix. If you get a chance to see that, that's unfortunately just on Amazon. But this thing worked in front of our cameras. The guys that came off are still off today in wonderful shape. And the thing is, it didn't use pharmacy. Now, I hate to point the finger, but if Florence Nightingale was here, she'd be already writing 20 letters before I finish speaking. I think that there's money in misery, and we have to be careful that we don't allow profit to take care of what should be our true humanity and inventiveness. There are ways of treating some of the things we suffer from now that are not being looked at because it actually damages someone's pocketbook. And that's me being blunt. This film in particular got me angry because I do other films other than medical or films, of course. But when you see some injustice, that's what would have got Florence going. When you see some injustice and something that should be looked at isn't being looked at, that is, if I could conjure up Florence Nightingale, I'd make her head of the board. She would have that shifted in no time.
Well, I can assure you here in the United States, as Winston Churchill once said, "You can always trust America to do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possible."
I didn't know he said that. That's a good one.
Yeah, he said that the United States, this was during World War II, when they said, well, now you've got FDR on. And he goes, well, of course, I've got FDR on now because you can always trust America to do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possible opportunity.
There we are. We're about ready for the right thing in addiction, of course, which is the other pandemic before this one with the COVID-19.
Right. Yeah.
But if this thing works, you'll have me back on talking about that because the implications of it are fantastic. And I believe it works. I saw it, filmed it, asked the hard questions. And it isn't being listened to because it doesn't fit in with the status quo, which has dollar signs for S's instead of status quo.
Right.
Anyway, well, I don't. I'm here to talk about Florence, not my recent one.
But I'll tell you what, Norman, we are all going to be watching Florence. It's going to be an outstanding show. I'm absolutely certain of it. It is timely, which is great, and Absolutely. It is a wonderful testament to the lady who will celebrate her 250th birthday. And I think that we should all raise a glass to not just Florence, but to the workers who still carry out what Florence embodied back 250 years ago.
Absolutely. As long as it's a glass of Guinness.
Stream On will continue right after this.
So many of us are staying home to flatten the curve. But many of you can't stay home. Many of you are essential workers, helping to nourish, heal, and get this country moving again. And so here at BMW, we're choosing 70 people in need to receive vehicles. If you or someone you know is an essential worker in need of mobility, let us know, and we'll deliver the vehicles to you so you can keep delivering for all of us.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, if you're not one of the 50,000 people who've taken the time to subscribe to our podcast, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, we make it simple enough to do. All you have to do, because it's free, go out to the Apple Podcast Store. We don't show favorites here. You can get us at the Google Podcast Store as well. You can find us on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and, of course, on YouTube, just to name a few, all right? If for some reason you can't seem to find us, pull out the old Google machine, type in Stream On with Jim Williams, hit the favorite button or the subscribe button. Each week you get a brand new edition of the podcast sent directly to your phone, your tablet, or to both, okay? Simple enough to do. Please go out and do that for us today. Also, we would like to take this opportunity to thank Norman Stone, the creator of the amazing biopic, A Family Must-See, on Britbox. It's very, very engaging, very, very interesting. So by all means, check out Nightingale and all the information on Nightingale and our interview with Norman in the show box below. Okay? All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay socially distanced from the pack because we don't want you getting sick, okay? We will see you next week for everybody here at Stream On. Thank you. And until next time, be safe, be well, and by all means, be careful.